There's this really interesting image that comes to us in the midst of Peter's great confession that he knows who Jesus is. It comes at this time in the Gospel of Matthew. Actually, other Gospels tell it as well, but I like the way Matthew's Gospel puts this forth. It's in chapter 16 of Matthew, beginning at verse 13. It says this: Now when Jesus came to the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others Jeremiah, others still Elijah, or one of the prophets." And then he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood have not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." You know, this was this great moment for Peter, because for him it was not only when his name is changed from Simon to Peter, but this word Peter actually means rock. And this image that Jesus is using is that on the leadership, on the capability, on the discipleship of Peter, the very church itself is going to be built. The community of believers is going to be built on his testimony and on his recognizing who Jesus is as the Messiah. It's this great passage, and for Peter, it's got to be a proud moment. I mean, maybe even the disciples came up behind him and kind of patted him on the back. Well done, Peter. You're always the first one, and you were just so great there. And you know, he's got to feel good. He's got to feel good in that moment because he's been the first to declare it. But here's what happens right after that. In verse 21, it says this: From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and of the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And then Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it! God forbid it, Lord! This must never happen to you." But Jesus turned aside to Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Here's what I noticed this time when I was looking at it that I hadn't before. In a mere 3 verses, Peter goes from the rock on whom the very church will be formed to a stumbling block. From the rock that the very church will be formed to a stumbling block. Both rocks, but both with very different outcomes and intentions. And I think the point of that passage is when Peter proclaimed Jesus as the Messiah, yes, he was in fact the Messiah, and on that understanding, that very church is going to be built. The problem is, Peter didn't have a full understanding of what that Messiah was all about. And as soon as you begin to talk about suffering and struggling and being killed, that's not the image that Peter wants to uphold as the image of the Messiah. You see, the Messiah was supposed to take the throne, not to be killed. And in that moment, Peter's witness really changes pretty dramatically. And it got me to thinking about this rock that we keep out in front of our house. This rock that declares peace, if anybody ever reads it or sees it. Now, you might look at that rock and you might wonder, what kind of peace is that? Is that the kind of peace that comes after everybody buys into everything that you're thinking? Or is it the kind of peace that says, you know what, God is in charge, life is good, I am going to trust God? I don't really know what this rock declares to everybody that sees it. In fact, probably most people don't see it. But as rocks, we declare through our life things that can be built as a firm foundation or things that can cause others to stumble. And Peter recognized that was what was before him. Am I going to trust fully this revelation that God is giving me through Jesus? Or do I still need to make it my own? Rocks declare many things. And Peter, in his later time in life, declared what it meant to really be a full follower of Jesus. Because like Jesus, he too was killed for his witness, for what he brought to the world. And on Peter, and on the witness of many other disciples, the church has been built. And now it's our turn. Will we be that continued foundation in which God is building up the church? Or will we be another stumbling block because we cannot fully accept the peace that Christ is bringing to us?